You're tuned in to Grown Folks Production. In the mix. With the commish, Nate.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Press Pass Live, your weekly OMFL podcast show. The OMFL, the world's oldest and longest online CFM, started in 2001 as a PC league. Still going strong today as we wrap up season 113. Let me welcome back the OG crew. They're not working. They're not sick. They're not in hospital. Well, technically, poor Maniac is still sick. But overall, we're here. We're healthy. Welcome in, Mr. D. Wayne. Tough loss just now. We'll talk about it. Mr. Maniac, guys, how you doing tonight?
So great.
As good as can be. As good
as can be for both of you on the men. Some of us emotionally, some of us physically, but we are here. Let's jump in it and talk about it. Mr. D. Wayne, I'm giving it to you. This may hurt just a little bit, but I promise you we will get through it together, hand in hand. Let's recap both the divisional round and the championship round. You want to start off, D. Wayne, in the NFC or the AFC?
Give me 1 second. I'm pulling up the divisional round. We can start with the let's go with the AFC.
Let's go AFC.
We're just going. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I was just teeing you up.
Yeah.
I was trying to buy time so you can find your spot.
Yeah. I got it pulled up now. I'm sorry. The first game we'll glance at real fast. Just that Raven-Jets game. Nipple's been on a tear all season. I think he kind of, I think we've talked about us three. I think Trey and Hurt and everybody's been on the show this year. And I think even in the chat has talked about, how we kind of thought Nipples, he always plays so great. And when he's checked in, he's really good. And you just don't know when he's going to check out. Well, Nipples hadn't checked out yet. And he's I think he's maybe on a mission to prove us wrong. And this game against Cincyburg and these Jets who have played amazing this season, has won some big games. This game was just all Ravens. I think he really took Cincy out of his comfort zone. Cincy's one of the, at least offensively prolific players we've had here, since I've been here. He's went through spurts, every team he's ever had. He's shaped him into an offensive juggernaut at some point. In this game right here, the Ravens just kind of got him. He forced 3 turnovers. He only allowed 250 yards, total, rushing and passing combined. And a big telltale was Danny McDimes, who has, just been a stud since he's been here. Since he can make most quarterbacks look good, but he's made McDimes look great. It's a hell of a name. Has made him look great since he's been here. And dude, he just took him out of his game. I mean, a 39 QB rating, 181 yards, 3 touchdowns. He's only sacked 1 time, 56% passing. I think the defense speaks volumes for the Ravens here. Lamar Jackson had a great game. I mean, just a very, I guess you say, just a subtly good game. 230 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. He had an 85-yard pass that made those stats look great. But he just didn't give Cincy anything to play with here. Didn't turn the ball over. The Jets didn't run the ball, relatively well. I think they averaged about 4.5 to almost 5 yards a carry. But when you lose the game like this, you kind of get out of a rhythm. And I think that it just showed the Ravens how well defensively they've really stepped up. And, he's always been a great user on that, cornerback, secondary in general. He just was shut down one side of the field. And I do think Cincy's one of them guys that, will test him. I think he's confident enough in his skills that he'll test him every once in a while. And sometimes they can burn you. And I think this is one of those games that burned. I'm not going to go through just a ton of the stats, but some of them were interesting, like Sam McDimes having such an off game. Nate Wiggins and Hamilton had 3 combined picks. The Ravens just dominated this one. If you look at the score, it was 13-10 at halftime. But that second half, he just shut the Jets out. He outscored him 17-0 in the second half. Ravens was on a tear. Nipples on a tear. Maybe he's here to prove us wrong. And I'll jump over to the other game, the Colts and Chargers, which was a game I watched. And the Colts just kind of shut down a very on-fire Logan Chargers team that has been on a roll and just been tearing people up. And Bronco Man came in here and jumped out 27-0 and kind of was in control. 27-13, it looks a little bit better, but Bronco Man really was in control this whole game. And the same thing, Herbert gets shut down, the touchdown and 2 picks. Richardson, 11 for 12 passing, 91% completion percentage, 152 rating, just dominated. And then you go over to the running game. He really shut Logan down, running the ball, and the Colts I mean, Wheeler, he didn't even have to go Jonathan Taylor. John Taylor had a very subpar game. Wheeler is backup running back, who I've been watching. He's a really solid back, 10 carries, 86 yards. You got to love that coming from your backup running back. Like I said, I won't jump through just a ton of the stats. I know we're, Maniac, he's near his deathbed, and I don't want to keep him up all night. And but this example, the AFC is just an example of two owners right here that defensively made a stand in the playoffs. And we always say that the playoffs become a little more meat and grindy, I guess you'd say. Like the high scoring offenses usually don't show up in the playoffs. Everybody kind of gets up, they play a little tighter. The room for error is a lot smaller, and I think these two games really showed that. And I think the biggest surprise right here was the Bears and 49ers. I think the 49ers, I thought he was kind of on a run here to prove, that he's here. He's not to be forgotten about. He's still D-Money. And in this game, Colin just kind of uncharacteristically made D-Money turn the ball over 4 times.
Yep.
D-Money outgained him. The first downs were 17-14 in favor of the Bears, but he just outgained him 300 to 270. But the big tale here was 4 turnovers for D-Money, and that's just not like him. His backup, the quarterbacks both played bad here. One just played worse. And I think this just shows these are two guys right here. D-Money he kind of wins his games off defense and protecting the ball, running, and he will show you that he can spread it and throw it around, but he would love to let you turn the ball over 6 times and him cruise to a win. And the script was kind of flipped here. Colin played a hell of a game. Even though I did watch this game multiple times, trying to scout Colin a little bit, and Colin offensively played nothing like against D-Money like he did against me, but he did just enough here and just kind of took D-Money out of his script, I guess you say. And it's kind of like Colin. I know he's a Giants guy just like Bill is, but he's kind of on the same track Bill was on last season, where Bill came in the playoffs. I think Colin was a 4 seed, if I'm not mistaken. I think he did win the North. But, I mean, if you had to tell me that he's going to have to beat D-Money and work his way through, I don't think many people would have picked that. And you got to give props to Colin here on how great of a game he played against D-Money. And I'll just touch on the Panthers and the Cowboys just for a second. But Bird played a hell of a game. He just couldn't catch a break. He turned the ball over once. He had a couple just mistimed, guy drop a pass, overthrow a guy. And I think I've seen that with Bryce Young throughout the year with him. I know Bird gets really frustrated with Bryce Young, and Bryce played a pretty good game. I mean, 103 passer rating, 2 touchdowns. He ran the ball. I think he could have kept running the ball, and I think he'd have been more successful with it, but he kind of got away from it. And to me, that just played, right into my hand. McMullen had 115 yards rushing. Vaughn had 20 yards rushing. It was just a good game all around. If you look at just a few of the defensive stats, there wasn't a ton. They had 2 sacks, the Panthers did. Lawrence had a sack for the Cowboys. A lot of tackles for loss because he ate up my running game for the most part. I broke a couple long runs, but that divisional round, I think, speaks volumes to what the OMFL is in the playoffs. It's defense, defense, and defense, and it wins. And I think that's kind of where you see these teams. Everybody seems to tighten down and play really good defense. They don't want to turn the ball over. And it kind of goes to the first person that turns the ball over usually loses the game. And I think that's the telltale in the divisional round. I don't know if any games stick out to y'all.
Ladies and gentlemen,
let's go.
That's what you call efficiency right there. My guy just ran through all 4 of these games. He didn't even pause. He was not letting us get a word in. There was no interrupting the flow. He was getting through these 4 games in a couple of minutes, and he did just that. I completely agree with you, D-Wayne. I think the AFC, both of those games, very similar, right? The scores were similar. The quarterback stats were similar. The way those games were won were similar. Both the Ravens and the Colts, both getting 3 interceptions. Both shocking to me. Not that either one of these teams won, but how dominant they kind of won both of these games in the second half. And then looking over the NFC before I turn it over to Mr. Maniac, the Chicago Bears, 2 pick sixes. I mean, not only to pick him off 4 times, but to get 2 pick sixes, that's going to go a long way. And then even in your game, the 1 pick six from Overshawn, like you're so dynamic with him. You can make all the plays. You basically shut down everything in between the hash lines. And it just is a a motivation killer to throw a pick six to the guy that you're using. You know what Dwayne's going to do. He's not hiding it from you, and then he picks you off for a pick six, man. That could just really kill it. Some really great games, and you'll hear me say this as we kind of go through the rest of this business season, and I'm sure we'll have another Press Pass Live before a draft. Maybe not. It's only Monday tonight, and the bowl game should be in the next 24 to 48 hours, so maybe there's a draft before we come back next Monday. But this backs up what I've always said about the all Madden settings, and you may hate them. That's fine. You're welcome to that opinion, but you can't deny looking at this playoffs. You've got two fresh teams that have not won a bowl game. We will crown a first-time OMFL champion in this bowl game coming up, and a bunch of teams that fought and battled to the bitter end, whether it was the Colts who got hot, the Bears who got hot as the season went along, the Panthers who found a little momentum as we got going. Some really, really great playoffs. Mr. Maniac, what did you think about the playoffs in the divisional round?
I didn't get a chance to watch much of anything past like the wild card, especially with all the stuff I have been having going on this last week or so. But definitely, I did tune in today, watched the Bears and Cowboys for the most part, and just Colin was just super efficient with how he was working on offense and just his spots where he picked when he made big plays, like especially the long touchdowns. I was just kind of like in shock on a couple of them because I thought Dwayne's guys were going to make a play. It's kind of
Hold that one, though. I'm going to make you hold the championship. We haven't talked about the championship round yet. Just do a divisional round because I want to talk about that game, too. Crazy game. I think the craziest game I've actually watched in quite some time.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to watch much of anything else in the division round. I checked out the scores. I thought with Colin defeating D-Money was absolutely just a shocker, and I did see the stats from that. Him having 2 pick sixes in that game was crazy, and then seeing Bronco Man actually defeating the Chargers. The Chargers dismantled me in the wild card. I literally couldn't do anything. It's probably one of the more frustrating games in this Madden that I've had. Was that on that wild card game? And to see that the Colts came out and pretty much manhandled him was impressive as well. And then also with the Ravens on the Jets, I mean that was almost kind of a similar situation the Jets went through as I did in the wild card. There, he just got dismantled completely, top to bottom, 30-10. Nipples is playing high. Really, literally maybe playing high.
I'm about to say you gotta watch those words, bro.
But he is playing really exceptional football right now in the OMFL. So he's taking his level, higher and higher. And then also just looking at that Cowboys game there, definitely feel like Bird with what he's done with that team that he's got is pretty impressive. Because if I was to take that team, I probably would have been 4 wins and picking in the top 5. So very impressed with what Bird has done, and Dwayne he's steady Eddie and makes you earn every yard. And I think it's been like what the difference, like playing Dwayne and the D-Bunnies and stuff like that. It's not so much that you earn every play or every other play or whatever. Like they make you earn every inch that you get, and if you're not mentally ready for it and stuff, you're gonna fall, and sometimes you fall flat, and that's what happens. So, overall impressive playoff from everybody.
Let's talk AFC Championship. Dwayne, take us away before we talk about your game.
Oh, the AFC Championship was a fun one. If I know at one point he had like 40 people watching his game last night, and I thought that was pretty crazy. I'm not sure where it happened. He had like 6 or 7 or 8. I'm sure most of us watching, and then it just shot up to like 45 people at some point watching his game, which I thought was awesome. but crazy. And I think Bronco Man, I think you said something in the chat. His buddies were all over the place with him. There's no way I could have watched the chat while I'm playing and have my buddies
and his
prodding me
chat
all game.
was popping up on his screen as he was playing.
Yes.
There's no way. It would have drove me nuts.
Oh, yeah. I heard him say one time, he's like, yeah, your chat popped up right where my pass was going. And I was like, there's no way I could have that. But if you look at the game, it honestly was crazy. I mean, he ran the ball well. He actually underpassed, but I think that says a lot for Nipples. Nipples, everybody knows he runs. His secondary is probably one of the best just because of how he kind of reminds you of Cly back in the day of how he uses that corner and would just shut down the side of the field. And if you go through it,
there's a name from the past right there, Dwayne. Cly.
Yes, I remember Cly playing, and it was shut down the side of the field. And I think that Nipples just kind of took that torch from him, and is that next great like cornerback user. And if you go to it, the box score is kind of telltale. The craziest one is the 8 turnovers by the Colts. And I'll give him something. A couple of those were at the end. You can tell he's just forcing. He's just trying to do something at the end of the game. But Richardson, 3 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Jackson, another efficient game, 2 touchdowns, 272 yards passing. Rushing, I thought that the Colts could have ran the ball effectively, and it kind of went ahead. I think he averaged like 6 or 7 yards a carry. But Bronco Man if he has one kryptonite, is he wants to pass the ball for good or for bad. And I think this is a game where I think he could just rely on his running game. And that's the one way to attack Nipples guarding that, running that cornerback is you just go away from him. Don't pass to him. And I just think Bronco Man just couldn't talk. It's so hard when you play a certain way all season. You run into somebody like Nipples and you have to change your whole game plan. The Ravens ran the ball well. Just nothing crazy. He didn't have to do nothing. But Copeland is another one of these stud, first, second-year receivers. 8 catches, 220 yards receiving, 2 touchdowns, a rookie. So, I mean, you got to call him the AFC Championship MVP. It's just crazy what these receivers are coming to the league doing. You go over to the Colts and McCullough, who is another rookie, 3 catches, 110 yards, 2 touchdowns. Fredrickson, which was a big pickup this offseason for him, 3 catches, 33 yards. I thought that was a big one. He's been like a really great, like intermediate passing weapon for him this season because if I'm not mistaken, he's like 90. I could be wrong. He's like low 90s speed, but he's really high acceleration. And Nipples just kind of took him away. And then, like I said, you go defensively. This is just the telltale. The Ravens got 4 sacks, and then they got 7 interceptions. Wiggins with 3, Humphrey with 1, Wooten with 1, Mitchell with 1, Hamilton with 1. He's just got studs everywhere. And I just think it's one of those games where I think his play style plays right into what Nipples wants you to do. He wants you to throw the ball. If you could beat Nipples throwing the ball, that's great. I just think like 9 out of 10 times, if you have to throw the ball that many times against him, and I know he was behind at a certain point, and he just started chunking it up. But this game was relatively close. Was it 21-20 at halftime?
Yeah.
He kind of stumbled, and I think you even said something to him. At one point, he was down by like 10 points. He's like, I can't run the ball no more. I got to start passing.
He was down 9, middle of the third. It was like, I can't run it anymore. It's like, what are you talking about? You got a whole game left.
This is not a shot at Bronco Man. When I say it's just an awful mentality to have. Yeah. You can't abandon your game plan when it's. I mean, your third quarter. Even I fell into that earlier. Like you got to be able to stay somewhat balanced, or somebody like Nipples will just pick on you. And then that's what happened here. I'd like to hear y'all's thoughts on it. But I thought Bronco Man had a great season. I will tell Bronco Man that Jenna, if I was on camera like that, you'd see Jenna hit me about 10 times with how upset he gets while he plays. And Jenna I would have to pause it. Y'all get domestic violence on her.
This was painful to watch a guy battle in the first half of this game, take a lead in the halftime, openly say, I'm playing with casino money here. I don't know how I have the lead. He made a big play at the end with like 6 seconds left in the half to score a touchdown. And then just like I related to it because I've been there. I have been the guy that chases the big play after a bad pick. And bro, after the first bad pick, that was it. It was like the switch was on. I am throwing picks no matter what. And and I laughed. And he was right. Like late in the game, he made a great comment. He's like, no one's open. And he was 100% right. Nipples has built such a great team. There was not a lot open in that man defense, and you needed to like take off the quarterback or run the ball a little bit more, some play action maybe, and that might not even have worked. But there were a couple times he's like, how did he make that play? I'm like, bro, he was covered. He wasn't open. You threw a ball to a guy that wasn't open at all. That's how he made the play. And just to watch him, it just snowballed on him. And I felt so bad because he worked so hard this season, and he ran up against the guy that built a really great team, and the second half snowballed on him. Maniac, do you get to watch any of this? I know that's about when you were kind of going through your sickness, man. We done put Maniac to sleep.
Yeah, I can't see if he's still in here.
My bad. I paused it there. I was coughing a while ago and listening to everything. No, I didn't get to watch it, but it sounds like it was an epic game, and definitely I think I just listen for what you talked about, the experience that Bronco Man had. I will be the first to admit, like I've kind of been in that situation a couple of times, especially this Madden so far, like in the playoffs and stuff, and things seem to be rolling your way kind of for a little bit. You're running the ball and stuff, and then it's like all of a sudden, like you can't get nothing running, you can't get nothing to passing, and you're like, what do I got to do? Because nothing's working. There's no holes to run through, there's no passing lanes. So it's like, what do I do? And then that's when you start just like forcing stuff. Like, well, maybe I'll make a play. You start making excuses, for like, well, or just making up stuff that I'm hoping that he'll jump up, and make the Moss catch on this one and stuff. And then that's where it just starts snowballing. And I've been there where you just kind of start losing your mind, like, what is happening to me?
We watched him go through the roller coasters of emotion in the second half of that game, from ready to break something to giving up to having some hope to giving up, breaking something. Like, it was a roller coaster there in the second half, and I was right there with him. I was riding it all the way. It was one of those games I felt the same in Dwayne's game of like, I didn't want to say anything because people, they're in the emotions of the game, and it's like you don't want it to come off wrong. It's just like, but it's like you're watching your buddy just melt, and you're like, man, just pause for a second and catch your breath, and you're right in there. And it just kept snowballing on him. Speaking of snowballing on him, let's talk about it. Chicago, Dallas. I messaged Dwayne after this one. I was like, this is one of the craziest games I've ever watched. This was the plays in this game were nuts. Dwayne, break it down. You were there. It was your team.
That's right. It was a hell of a game, honestly. I didn't even realize how good of a team he's built.
Yeah.
Until I scouted, yesterday, started trying to watch back on him playing D-Money, and he's got a hell of a team built, and he's got a hell of a team built for at least 2 more seasons before he really has to pay guys. And there's just not a lot of holes. If you look at it, he outgained me 400 to 291. He had more first downs than me, 20-16. And I told him even afterwards, I said the telltale was I don't get outrushed very often, and Colin has been very vocal about he would rather throw interceptions than run the ball. And I told him, I said he had under 8 rushing yards. And I told Colin, I said, Colin, if you can run like that, it opens up that passing game so much. And I think that today was a perfect example. He kind of caught me a little bit off guard with how well he did run. But if you look at Caleb Williams, 320 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, almost 90% completion percentage. And the tail of his was he averaged almost 17 yards an attempt passing the ball. And you go to Dak, I mean, honestly, it's a relatively good game for outside the last interception, 200 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. 14-24 is not where I'd like to be completion percentage, but it's 8.5 yards an attempt. And it's just a difference when you can get them big chunk plays. You don't have to have 10-play drives to get down the field, and you can score the way he scores. It puts so much pressure on the opponent. And you look at his rushing, this is what I was telling him. Swift, 13 for 74, almost 6 yards a carry. Trailer, 4 yards a carry. And then you go to mine. I kind of fell out of it. I only had 16 carries for like 80-something yards. But you go to his receivers, and he's just got some stud receivers. And Watts, I can't ever say his last name. The guy from Washington,
I think.
How do you say it?
Roma Dunze.
Okay. Well, him and Watts and the Dunze, 10 catches for 227 yards combined, and they averaged 4 yards after a catch on one guy and 3 after the other. Those guys were just some monster deep threats. He got down the field with them, and then DJ Moore ate you up in the middle. It was just a great game by him. I mean, if you go through it all, he just made the right plays at the right time. Like I said, you get him in third down, and he threw some deep passes, and his guys made plays for him. And that's just as I told him, that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. Is you like to be on the receiving end of those plays. You hate being on the other end of those plays, but they just happen. And Colin's always been a passing guru like that, and today it worked out real well. And I think even Nate said at the end, between all our funny stuff was happening, that I get a fumble with 3 minutes left or something like that, and get a chance to go down and make it a one-score game and end up throwing an interception. But it was a great game all around. He just had me against the wall the whole game. He kept playing his game. He ran the ball well. He had that one turnover as a fumble. It's very fluky. But he took care of the ball. And when Colin takes care of the ball like that, and he can be that efficient passing, and even on the defensive side, I went through it, and I think the tackles for loss, I think I had 9 tackles for loss compared to his 2, and I had 4 sacks compared to his none. So my defense on that side of the ball did well. So you can't ask for much more than that. I think it was a great NFC Championship game, and I don't ever like to lose. Don't get me wrong, but you got to just tip your hat to a competitor like Colin, and you kind of coming from the NFC. I love Nipples and I love Colin both, but I think it's going to be a hell of a game, and I just got to tip your hat when a guy plays as good as Colin did. You just kind of have to tip your hat to him.
I gave it 30 minutes before I sent my DM just to be safe because I didn't want to get caught in any kind of crossfire. But I will say that, yeah, there was only the one, you called it a fluky fumble. I was going nuts. I was like, what am I watching here? Like, this game is crazy. But there were like at least 3, maybe 4 or 5 other passes that he just threw into double coverage, and like it would hit the back of your DB. They wouldn't react like the ball wasn't there. He threw a couple of deep balls, including one touchdown down the left side where it's like, I'm just throwing it up. Both players sat in the end zone for like 55 seconds waiting for the ball to come down. And the receiver caught it and the DB acted like he was going for popcorn. I was like, what am I watching? Like, this is the goofiest thing I've ever seen. Like, it was just a crazy game. There was a play you made with Dak. It was a very insignificant, but I was just like, what am I watching? Like, Dak's rolling to his left. So like the opposite way that a right-handed quarterback wants to throws it back across his body, across the field to his right to hit Lamb on like a drag route, or I don't know what kind of route it was, but it looked like sort of like a sharp crosser, a short drag, takes it for a first down. I'm just like, I can't with this game. I just absolutely can't. This game has got some nuts plays, and I was the only one in D. Wayne's chat talking, and then I was like, well, what if he sees the chat? He's going to get mad at me for chatting. I was like, all right, I'm just stop chatting. So it just was a nuts game, and kudos to Chicago, not only out rushing you, which that too was like, there were several plays. You shut down the whole middle of the field, both rushing and passing so well, because you will shoot a gap. You're just like you're Ewan Kenobi. It's like, what the other guy's about to run. And I've seen you shoot the gap several times, and Colin, and I've noticed this when I play him, sets up running defense really well. So he'll like run one direction, get you to shoot it, and somehow cut back the opposite way, get 10 on you, get away from your user. And it's just like, holy cow, this game is absolutely crazy. It was a good game. It was one that I wish wasn't there was just some weird plays. I just wish it didn't have the like, neither owner did anything. It's just the way Madden played today. It just had some fluky weirdness that happened in this game. But either way, we got Chicago moving on. And like, I'm pumped for him because I've been lucky enough to be one of these teams that went on these crazy runs. It's exactly what the Giants did and Bill did last season. It's what I did several Maddens ago. Beat the 49ers and Dallas. That feels like you won the Super Bowl right there. You're playing with house money by the time you get to the bowl game. So let's see if Chicago can actually wrap this one up. First 2 didn't do it. Let's see if Chicago can wrap it up. Maniac, did you get to watch this one at all?
I did, man. I was laying down on the couch with my feet up and was watching this game, and I kept just going like, kind of like you, like, what on earth is going on? Like, what is one of the first things I said was, what's Colin feeding his receivers? Holy cow, those guys catch everything. I mean, they weren't dropping a ball. They were just, I mean, they were jumping up, looking like they were Randy Moss, and I was all like, wow, I need to get one of these guys for my team. But but I was just really impressed, like, with his play calling. And I mean, I'm impressed with this team. I don't know, maybe that's the way to do it, because I mean, like the first couple of seasons, man, he was just kind of like, it's like waiting in the shadows, building his team, and he's got like a rock solid roster that is all like in the. I bet the average age of his roster is like 24, because I just see a lot of young guys, and they're built well already. So. He's definitely gonna be a problem. Not in a bad way, but I'm just saying, like, he's gonna be a problem for everybody. He's gonna be back in the thick of things again, I think, in the next season. One of the most impressive things I thought too was, like, we were talking about, like, his running in this game too. Just very systematic with when he was running, and very efficient. But also was impressed with his offensive line, and I'm kind of saying, like, man, where are these guys at when I was playing Dwayne in the OMFL Bowl? I don't know. You probably remember there was like one little play. It was like a trap play, or maybe it might have been like a play to the left, and you were using your overshown, and the guard come around, sealed you off,
Yep.
and then the center came off his block and went and got the next guy at the next level. And he got like 10 or 15 yards on that run. I was like, oh my goodness, that was just beautifully blocked. It just sealed off. And so he's just built a really good team. He's got a good offensive line, good young offensive line. I mean, they're not like super young, but I mean, he's got youth and good veterans mixed in there, and he's just going to be good for the next little bit. And I'm really excited to see how his high-flying offense faces off against the guy that tends to shut the offense down. I mean, so
that's right.
It's going to be a good matchup.
Stat of the game for me, 89% against Dwayne. Like, no one does that. It's just, that's mind-blowing numbers. I will personally say I feel like he got lucky on a handful of those, but it doesn't matter. 89% is 89%, and that's just crazy, and Colin should be proud of how he played tonight. He beat one of the best ever to play here in the OMFL. Both of those owners are Hall of Famers, but let's just be honest, Dwayne is etched in the Mount Rushmore of the OMFL for his play on the field, and to beat him is something to be proud of. All right, we talked about doing a little bit of a mock draft and a bit of what we call a fix-em in 2 minutes or less. Now, I doubt that we'll be able to hold ourselves to this, but I gave each of us a team. Buccaneers and Rams are going over to Maniac. Raiders and Saints over to Dwayne. Eagles and Texans over to me. And we're going to go one at a time. We'll go Bucks, Raiders, Eagles. Then we'll go Rams, Saints, Texans. So we do like a mock draft for the first 6 picks. Unfortunately, we can't sit here and do a mock draft for the whole first round. A, we don't have that kind of time. And B, I'd be here all night. There's no way we can do that. Dwayne's got to go to work tomorrow, and so do I. And poor Maniac probably needs just to get some sleep. But we're going to do a mock draft. So not only are we making the first round pick for these 6 teams, but we're also going to say, what would we do to fix them, to right the ship, to get them back on track for winning in season 114? Mr. Maniac, you ready to get us going?
Yeah, man. I've got some notes here, man. So
talk about the Buccaneers, my friend. Go for it.
Them Buccaneers, man. Looking at their roster, he's definitely got some holes. I was also looking at he's got 19 free agents that are going to be either hitting the street or he's got to re-sign them. He does have $76 million in cap, but there's a couple of pretty big free agents there in his list, so that's going to probably take some of that cap pretty good. So he's going to have to be really efficient with that cap. So I'm probably going to sign a couple of those guys back if I'm him. Probably the offensive line, And just looking at his overall team, I think his needs are wide receiver, tight end, and I was looking at one of the things he struggled, I think, with stopping the run this season, and looking at his DNs, his linebackers. None of those guys, I don't think, have anything over like a 75 for block shedding, and so I really feel like that's probably part of the reason why he struggled against stopping the run. Vedave was the only guy that had like 87 block shed, which is a defensive tackle, which is also a free agent. So he's going to either have to sign him or let him walk. But definitely, with that being said, we just talked about struggling to stop the run. You got to keep that guy, even if unless he happens to retire, which he is 32, and that could happen. Looking at the overall roster, again, I was talking about their needs. The team is really weak at wide receiver past the first 2 wide receivers he has. He's got really fast linebackers, which are good and important, but they're really weak run stoppers. He doesn't have anybody there that can really stop the run. Best player to stop the run, again, is like what I said, Vedave. He just needs help there. The bright spot of this team, though, I think, is the DBs. He's got one of the best DB groups, I think, top to bottom of any of the teams, especially in the NFC South. And I think that's kind of where you can kind of build your team from there, or at least try to grow it at this point, because, okay, I got my DBs kind of locked up. I don't really have to worry about those. I got to really concentrate on getting guys that can stop the run. The mid-tier part of your front 7, I think, is really needs to focus. And he could also really possibly use maybe a guy on the offensive line as well. So with that being said, I think truly, though, if you're picking number 1, it's going to be really tough to look at anything like an offensive line. I just don't think offensive line is somebody that you're going to pick number 1 in the draft. I think you got to look at your prospects, see who really fits what your need is and what's there. And there is a couple guys that are grading pretty high at left tackle. You could take that. But for me, I think for him, I'm going to be looking at probably either taking like this guy, Melton. I think he's going to be a good guy from Texas Tech, 298, 6'4". He's a defensive tackle. Again, like we talked about, Vedave is getting old. If he's playing a 3-4, you could actually realistically kick one of these guys out to like one of the defensive ends to help kind of solidify your run defense and open up some lanes for your fast linebackers that you already have on the roster right now. So Melton, Norris, both those guys are kind of picks that you could look at. But I think Milton is your top guy for run stopping. The other guy is kind of intriguing to me, I think, too, and I keep trying to lose my voice, is this linebacker Culver. I think he's definitely showing he's got high awareness. And I think, too, that's kind of one of the things, like if you're having a linebacker it's either a pass rusher off the edge, you got to look at those guys. If their awareness is high, I think they're able to play rec a lot better than some of these other guys. He is a little bit older. I probably wouldn't take him at this 1, but possibly looking at if he's around later on or whatever, because I know how some guys are with some of these picks, so let them fall. If they're not just super great at speed or whatever, but if they're stronger, you might be able to pick them up later on or jump back in and get them late, and maybe in the first round if you're able to get a trade off before the trade deadline or whatever. You got some plans for that. But for me, though, I really think I'm taking that Milton guy, though, solidifying my defensive line. There is one wide receiver.
He's going to list 7 players here to take first pick.
There is one wide receiver I might look at. And again, like I said, he's got 2 wide receivers. But I don't know. It's to me, like, wide receiver is probably one of the weaker spots in this draft. And I feel like as long as the wide receivers he has are fast and are able to catch the ball pretty well, and he's got those two guys, he could probably pick somebody up in free agency. And but I'm going with the guy that's the big run stopper and helping solidify my defensive line.
Tough draft to have the number one pick. I feel very similar to the one that I had the number one pick. And defensive tackle number one, it hurts, but it might be the best move for them. All right, we're moving over to, I think, the Raiders with Mr. D. Wayne. Take it away, Wayne.
Yeah, I'll talk about the draft. Just my quick glance over it, going back to the Bucks and the Raiders. If there's ever a draft to maybe trade out of the top 10, it might not be a bad idea. Some guys just love to draft. I'm not against drafting offensive linemen or interior guy like that. But like you said, it's not flashy. There's a lot, I would feel looking at the Raiders roster, if I was him, I wouldn't be against trading this pick because I do think like wide receiver's a spot he needs to look at. If I'm the Raiders at this point, though, you got to figure something out. I looked, his starting quarterback was only sacked 6 times all season. But at the same time, he threw 43 interceptions. If I could tell J Bowles anything, would be to maybe take a few more sacks or hit the R3 button and take the intentional grounding penalty before I throw interceptions. I was trying to look through his offensive line's not awful because I was looking, I said, well, maybe he should get an offensive lineman, but his offensive line's not awful. I think the Raiders have a little bit of money to play with, and I know he's kind of trying to shop Max Crosby, whose value is pretty high. I do think with like a Max Crosby trade and maybe even trading his first-round pick, he might be able to get 4 or 5 pretty solid players to kind of fill some spots. But I don't think he's far off just looking at his roster. I do think he needs some speed at receiver. He's always been a guy who loves to pass the ball as well, coming from that AFC West with him and Glaze and those guys that just, it's like wild, wild west over there. And I just think if he'd cut down his turnovers, I think if he'd invest in maybe don't trust his offensive line, maybe if he keeps his pick, there is a couple offensive linemen I've looked at that I think you could get one of them guys and plug them in across his line and then just plug somebody in. He's got a left guard who's 90 overall. He's got a center who's 83 overall. Then he's got some high 70s. I think if he's going to keep his pick, I'm probably leaning towards a offensive tackle. I think Maniac was right on the receiver. That's the first thing I went to with him because I said, well, that's something that I might lean towards if I'm him, getting somebody fast. There's really not a bunch of – this is not a receiver draft. And I know we say that, and somebody will find somebody and he'll be a stud. But if that's the case, I think he could grab somebody maybe early in the second round and do the same thing. I think the Raiders are close. I'm not against him trading Max Crosby. He's kind of getting a little older. He's probably selling him at the highest he's going to be for the rest of Madden. If I could tell J Bowles anything to help improve this roster, I might even offer that pick up and see what I could get in return. You might be able to get a late first-round pick with a pretty good player. And if you're going to invest in your offensive line or something like that, I think that would be the route I would go. I might trade that first-round pick for somebody's later first-round pick or maybe a couple second-round picks and a good player. Somebody will do it because there's a lot of guys here that just love to draft. And that's kind of the way I would lean is I'm going offensive line. I'm trying to build around that quarterback. He's got a stud quarterback. You got to find a way to give him more times where he doesn't throw 43 interceptions. J Bowl has a good roster. I don't think he's that far away. Cut down his turnovers. He's one of the top passing teams. I'm investing in that offensive line, or I'm looking to get Crosby in that first-round pick and maybe solidify a few other spots.
Offensive line gave up 5 sacks combined. That is, I can't even wrap my head. I gave up 5-6 a game. Like, I can't wrap my head around the entire season. What I do feel like that team is missing, and where it bleeds into what I have with the Eagles, is running back. He could use a running back. McCaffrey's getting really old. Only rushed for 833 yards or something like that. If I were the Eagles, first thing I'm doing, that offense has gotten old. It has lost athleticism. It has lost some speed. I'm moving Saquon Barkley. I think you're a year too late for moving Saquon. He's still averaged over 4.7 yards per carry. Only 161 carries, but 759 yards. Only 4 touchdowns on the season. I'm going with Batty. He's a 4-year pro. He's got a little bit more speed. I'm getting everything I can get for Barkley. I'm looking at trading possibly Hurts. I'm seeing if anybody's willing to give me anything with Hurts, and I'm maybe looking at Justin Warner. I might look at a rookie somewhere in the draft, depending on what I can get for Saquon. Maybe it's like a second round pick, and then you start Warner if you absolutely have to. But I have to invest some speed and some athleticism in this receiver position. Mm-hmm. The OMFL will always, Madden will always revolve around speed. And sure, 92, 93 is a pretty quick receiver, but let's be honest, we've got 95, 96, 97, 98 cornerbacks out there. You're going to need somebody that can stretch the field in the center as a slot receiver on the outside, someone that you can put somewhere that can make the defense have to play over the top from time to time, and they just don't have it. So I am going to go look at receiver depending on what I can get for Saquon. I think the offensive line is okay. You maybe can pick up another veteran there on the offensive line. His numbers look pretty average across the board when it comes to the rest of the OMFL. I think maybe in free agency, you can pick up somebody. The defense is solid. They're still fairly young. I think you'll be okay for the rest of this Madden cycle. I think you got plenty of playmakers. Maybe later in the draft, you maybe pick up a DB, a safety, a cornerback, something like that. Maybe a linebacker, but I think you're good there. The defensive line is really good. You need to produce a couple more turnovers over there, but I think if you're able to make teams honor what you're doing on offense and you're able to get some more offensive efficiency, it will give the defense a break. And right now, the defense isn't getting a break. They're on the field 90% of the game, and I don't care who you are and who you play around here. If you're on the field that much, you're going to break sooner or later. So for me, depending on what I can get for Saquon is going to open up a couple of different options for me as I move into free agency and really into the draft, which is where I want to go next. I think my number one goal or my number one target is I'm picking one of these receivers off. It is not a deep draft for receiver. Go find the best speedster receiver with a decent overall. If you just feel like you can't pick that or that's going to be too far down your line of picking, then grab one of these left tackles that are up here. Neither one of you guys really went offensive line, a couple of maybes in there. I'm going left tackle. I'm going receiver first. If that just feels too far down the line, because they are pretty far down the line here, then I'm taking one of these left tackles. It's not sexy, but I'm going to give my quarterback some time. I'm also moving away from some of those quarterbacks. I'm moving away from Saquon. I'm getting whatever I can get from him. Give me draft picks. Give me draft capital. I'm going to use that draft capital to go find a receiver. I'm going to use that draft capital to go maybe find some more offensive linemen. I think he could use maybe a rookie line or running back, kind of middle rounds of this draft, third, fourth round, pick up the fastest guy out there. Just see what he does once you put him out there on the field. You've already got a backup plan there in the other guy, and I think there's some potential there to continue to build. But number one, I got to get younger on offense. I got to get some speed and some athleticism. And if I just feel the draft isn't playing out that way, let's say the Raiders want a receiver. Let's say, the Bucks, I doubt it, but let's say they want a receiver. And so you're forced, then take one of these tackles, call it a day, and move on. I'm not taking a DB, not this high in the draft. I'm not taking a linebacker. I'm not taking a defensive lineman. I have all that if I'm the Eagles. I really want to pour into the offensive line. I want to get some athleticism at the skill positions. And like you've already said for the first two guys, it's a great draft to try to trade down. The problem is when it's a great draft to trade down, everybody knows it's a great draft to trade down. Ain't nobody wanting to give you that high price for those top 3 picks. And so you're probably going to be stuck with them and you're going to have to make the pick. Going back to you, Mr. Maniac, let's do the Rams at number 4.
All right, we're looking at the Rams at number 4. Really, their team is built really well. Logan left the team in pretty good situation. Now, the only thing with this team is they don't have a whole lot of cap space, obviously, because he signed a lot of guys the previous season. So he's only got like $29 million in cap space. He does have 15 free agents fixing to hit the road. So you're going to have to make a choice, I think, on a couple guys. I think the rest of the guys, he's probably, they're filler guys. You can probably get just, equal opportunity from like some of the lower lower hanging fruit in free agency, get a little bit cheaper contract, and not lose much production from some of the guys that he's going to be losing and possibly paying more. They really need to have a good draft, though, with that situation with the cap, unless he's able to maybe drop a guy or two and gain some cap space. But really going to have to work with the cap that he's got. Really, he's got main pieces of the offensive line there. He's got the quarterback. He's got good wide receivers. He's got a good tight end. So, I mean, all the pieces there. He could stand possibly to get another running back. I think the running back that they have there is Najee Harris, I believe. And so he's a little bit slower, but he's really a solid thumper in the backfield. So maybe possibly look at getting in free agency, backup running back there with a little bit of speed or something there. But I think looking at his team is kind of similar to the Bucs. Really, their big weakness is around defense, and really, but the thing with them that's not the same with the Bucs is their DBs are also not really great as well, and also a little bit older. And he does have a couple of good guys there, but they're not as quite as deep and not the phenomenal players that some of these other guys have with the 99 superstars. But I think looking at the draft and then looking at free agency, obviously we don't know who's going to be in free agency, but looking at the draft and where we're standing right now, you're seeing the front seven. And again, I think that's where he needs to attack for this team right away in that draft. You're looking at the outside linebackers, you're looking at middle linebacker, you're looking at defensive ends. There's the defensive ends, I think, on the left side are pretty deep. The right side, not quite as much talent there. So I want to stick away from that with being this high in the draft. Defensive tackle, I think, is going to be another spot that's pretty deep. Now, he does have one of the better defensive tackles right now in the league, but you could possibly pair him up with, like, say, Norris. That would be a great guy to look at possibly there. But my eyes are kind of cast upon this left outside linebacker. Clemens, I think, is going to be somebody to look at. And then there's also the left defensive end, who I think is a speed rusher, and probably the guy that I would probably pull the trigger on, and that is Doug Tart from Utah. This guy looks like he's somebody that could be something special. Him or Street, I think they're kind of very similar type players. These two guys, I think, fit them in on his defense, continue to build that front seven through the rest of the draft that he's got. You could probably look to solidify that team. Again, like I said, only $29 million. That's not like a whole lot of money, but it's a little bit of money. But really, truly, honestly, though, the way these contracts are, you get one guy that's mid 80s. You're taking up probably the majority of that. So you got to really focus and be really efficient with your money going forward. But he's got all the other pieces there, like I said, the quarterback and all that stuff like that. So again, you just got to kind of build some of these guys that are like not the sexy picks, but necessary for your full team to be competitive. And I think especially with him coming back this season from being gone so long, hopefully he can get back in and really kind of build this team and stuff. But I think that's where you got to attack it. It's got to be on that defensive line. And I think at this point in the draft, unless he trades back, I think you're looking at trying to pick up one of these edge rushers to help get a little bit more going on your defensive side.
T. Wayne, please, for the love of God, fix my Saints.
Yeah, I was just looking over. I had to ask you first. Did Olave get a 5th-year deal? 5th-year option, I mean?
Don't know if I want to let that cat out of the bag just yet. But
okay.
No, he is up for contract. I am trying to see if I can do a sign and trade. No one is called. If no one calls by the end of re-signs, I have to make a decision. Am I going to re-sign him and keep him and invest my money into 2 receivers, or do I let him walk? So I'm up against a big choice, but trying to see if I can do a sign and trade possibly.
Okay, I was looking. You don't really have, outside of Olave, you've got kind of everybody locked up. You don't have so you have like $25 million in cap room, not counting your draft stock. I was looking. You got the 5th pick. Just looking at your roster in general, I had it pulled up right here. You got your quarterback locked down. You got your receiving core locked down. Outside of deciding what you do with Olave, I think you're one of a few teams that had 3 receivers with over 800 yards. So you're spreading the ball around. Your offensive line's young. I think you couldn't go wrong with going with offensive linemen. But you have a young offensive line. And then I looked at your secondary, and you have a very young secondary. So the place I kind of go with, I think you were like 28 touchdowns and picks. And I don't know if a lot of that, just getting pressure with that young offensive line or what it is. And I looked at your defensive line, and your defensive line is pretty solid outside. I think you could go with an elite pass rusher at some point. And I know that's easier said than done because you just never know what kind of pass rush you're going to get. But I was looking, I kind of put like a pseudo trade out. Like your 5th pick is worth like $1,700. That pretty much equals a 1st, 2nd, 3rd round pick for like a mid-20s pick. And I don't necessarily see that as a negative thing. And it's kind of like you said earlier, when people are trying to trade down, most people aren't trying to trade up. There are people who will bite for that because people just love to get high draft picks. They like to get those high-end guys and get them for 5 years for cheap. And there was a running back. I did look at your running backs, and you have one really good running back, and then it kind of drops off from there. And I know, obviously, with your record you had this season, and you were in a lot of games, and you're passing the ball quite a bit. But there's a running back that I found, and I hate that I found him because he's going to be a stud for somebody, and that's Niles Forbes. And I think he's the number 1 rated running back, but he's fast. He's 6'1", 230 pounds. He's fast. It says elusive back tight, but his like break tackle and stuff, everything was ranked really high. I would be curious and seeing what I could get for that, or even like Olave. Olave's worth 630 value on seeing how you could accumulate that into more picks, especially like I said, I just don't think you're as high end, especially for what you need on the prospects this season. I would for sure shop around and see. I know that you say nobody likes to trade with you, but I sure would shop that pick and just see what's out there. I don't think you're offensively, your team is there. I didn't know you kind of had Olave out there and still deciding on him, but just looking at your team, the passing the ball is not an issue. I know defensively, you're one of the hardest teams to play defensively, the way you use your safety. So you kind of eliminate one big contract back there because you don't need to pay a user safety or something like that, $30 million, $20 million. And I see your secondary is pretty young. They're only going to get better. I think this is one of the better Maddens for kind of building players, especially young players. But I would lean towards leaning towards the offensive line, defensive line, especially a strictly pass rusher. I think you run a 3-4 after seeing Chase Young where he's at. But your running game, I think offensive line and that running back would be great to see. And a lot of guys, was it this season you traded Ramczyk, or was that 2 seasons ago?
That was this past season, yeah.
The past season. So you're going to go young there. You get rid of, he's on the older side. He's the older, expensive side. I think that running back would be great. He's not who I would pick at number 5. I would have to be, at least low to mid-teens to pick that kind of running back because I still don't see his specific stuff since we're not at the combine yet. But he looks like a stud, and I think you need another running back to go with that running back you got. I think your receiving core is good. I honestly, unless you get a smashing offer for Olave, I'd probably keep him. I think Olave is a good receiver, especially to complement Hal. I didn't realize that – not Hal. Hall?
Either way, I know who you're talking about. It depends on what day you ask me. I'll change it.
I did not realize he was as big as he was, being 6'5", and Olave being a smaller receiver really complements him real well. And then your other guy is what's his name, Shaheed, who's a speedster, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. I don't think you're far off. I think the offensive line's young. Your defensive line, I think you can get more pressure with somebody elite like a Max Crosby. maybe you and the Raiders need to be talking to each other about that. I don't think you're far off. Like I said, I know we're telling everybody their secrets now about trying to trade back. I would explore trading back and maybe even getting the mid-teens. I think you could easily get a first and second round pick if somebody's willing to do it, or a first round pick in a player, or something of that nature. I think your pick's worth like $1,700. It's almost worth what Crosby's worth, I think. I don't think you're that far off. I think there's some players there. If you wanted to stick with your pick, there is some offensive line there. And if I'm not mistaken, there's one really good pass rusher I've seen. I'll scout that for you, and I'll tell you him when I figure that out offline, so nobody gets that secret.
I appreciate it.
But I don't think you're far off. I think you need that one running back. I looked at your running attack for somebody who's had some really good running attacks with Kamara back in the day. I think that's what you're missing, is that running game to complement your good passing game.
If anybody wants to send me a first, second, and third for my first, you dial my phone number. Let's talk, because I think I'm open to that. As long as it's not 32, I'd be totally open to that. Houston Texans were the last team we were going to do this on, and this was hard. I look at his team, and there's not a lot of holes. The very first one I would do is I would have got rid of C.J. Stroud to begin with. Just my personal style. I can't play with an 88 throwing power quarterback. I don't know how he does it. I think he needs to draft somebody. He needs to see what he can do better. Raj is all about the big play offense. He likes to throw the deep ball. He likes to stretch you deep, and he still makes that happen, but you can see he makes it happen with a lot of interceptions and a low completion percentage because CJ just doesn't have that big of an arm. He has some athleticism, but him and the Eagles are very similar. That needs to be in the hands of a very different type of owner. A D. Wayne does well with that. A D. Money does well with that. A Maniac, I've seen him do well with that mobile quarterback, maybe not the cannon arm. He's going to dink, dunk you, pick you apart, hit those crossers, those comebacks, take off on a 3rd and 12 and get 35 on you. He's just going to kind of be that thorn in the side. Looking at some of the rest of his team, my other portion I was going to go to is going to be running back, but I really think that he's got some potential on this team. He's got some young guys that I think could break out, but if he finds a running back like the one that maybe you pointed out, that might be something to look at. I don't know with his offense and the way he runs his offense. I don't know if that's going to be a great kind of investment. Maybe another receiver. This isn't a great draft for a receiver. Maybe you can pick that up in free agency, but Brandon DeMarco is always going to be the top guy that gets a lot of the big plays. I still think get rid of Stroud, go grab the best quarterback in this draft. Let's let it go for a season, see how it goes, and be really ready to go when we get to season. What would it be? 115, that last season of this cycle. His offensive line is above average. I mean, we're looking at 2, 3, 5, and 7 sacks given up. I mean, that's pretty darn good. And they all seem to be staying relatively healthy. The defense had playmakers. He's got speed at DB. Maybe he wants a little bit more speed at the safety position, but even with that said, he's got X-factor players back there that are young, and so he's going to make tons of plays. He gets Paxton Spears from me for like a 3rd-round pick, turns him into a Pro Bowler with 10 sacks. He did tell me his little cheesy gimmick he uses. Shame on you, Roger. I'm just joking with that. It's not cheesy. I mean, I don't like it, but it is well within the rules. And he's like, I use the defensive tackle on his end. I make sure he gets 1-on-1, and he just beats the 1-on-1 every single time. I'm like, God darn it, why can't I make myself do that? But he gets plenty of defensive line pressure, not a lot of interceptions, and you would think he would get more with these kind of players. Derek Stingley, Christian Harris, Bullocks, Dubbins. He's got some really good players back here. I mean, just by himself, Stingley has 17 deflections, only 4 interceptions. He's got to hang on to a couple more of those. And then, looking at the touchdowns last year, he did score 5 defensive touchdowns, but you probably want a little bit more playmaking ability there. So this was a tough team to fix. Personally, I got to get the big arm guy. I'm this high in the draft. I've got a lot of the other pieces. I can get a running back later in the draft. I feel like every single one of us have seen a 3rd, fourth round running back come out of nowhere and be top 5 in the league in rushing. You just go find a speedster that comes late in the draft. Guys usually don't go after the running backs early in the draft. I think you can get a running back later. I think the offensive line is fine. It's not a great draft for receiver. I think you can find that later. Your tight ends are fine. The defense, maybe find some playmakers late in the draft. This first one, I'm going quarterback. There's not a lot of quarterbacks out there. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take the big arm guy, the best guy that I can find. And it's actually not going to be one of these top guys. Now, things could change as we get to the combine results and the other results. But on the surface, these guys, you don't fall in love with any of them. But I think a guy like a Sheffield, maybe a Lang, maybe a Stark, maybe a Ward. These are some of the guys. I really like Stark, Lang, and Sheffield. These are big guys, big quarterbacks. He plays really well with those big, tall guys. They're going to have a cannon arm. He can figure out all the other one stuff. Sheffield, I think, would probably be the pick for me unless something changes when we get to the combine grades. That so far is going to be the best pick for me for the Houston Texans. And I think Houston's right there. They are just right around the corner from being able to turn the corner and make some plays this next offseason. All right, let's open up the mailbag. We've got one question. Now, this is going to be a fun one for Mr. Randy. Outside of gameplay, what is your favorite OMFL thing that we do? The extra games like Pick'em, Fantasy, etc., the draft shows, Press Pass Lives, etc. For me, hands down, the draft shows. They've sort of hit a lull the last, 2 cycles. I don't get as many call-ins. We don't get as many people that want to co-host. There was a time we had 2 different shows going. We had 3 different co-hosts going. We'd have 8 to 10 call-ins. There would be people there all night. It was like a lot of fun. They are still my favorite thing that we do. What about you guys?
Go ahead, Maniac.
Yeah, I would have had to say it's the draft show. I don't think the one reason why the last one wasn't very good because I wasn't there.
That's right.
So, but no, it's one of the favorite things, and it's always definitely fun. We're always going to have the NFC North for sure on the show, and you get those 4 guys involved, especially 3 of them. That's an interesting subject in itself with those 3 guys, especially with Priest and Big Herd, and then with Tim. Well, those guys can make some entertaining shows for sure. But it's always fun watching guys get excited about finding hidden gems, and they found the next coming of the Joe Montana or Tom Brady or the next best wide receiver that's going to end up winning the Rookie of the Year and stuff. So, it's, again, like I said too before, it's everybody's kind of on the restart, and everybody's on the same playing field right now, and you're getting to kind of like Christmas Day open up new little toys that you're going to get to play with for the next couple weeks or few weeks or whatever of the season.
Yeah, I think that's kind of hard to argue with. I will say, just to differentiate something from y'all, I really like the preseason, the coach interviews, because you do like 2 or 3 of them in a show.
Yeah, OMFL Media Days.
And the media days, I always enjoy that because even more so, the new Madden hasn't broken anybody's heart yet, so everybody's really high spirited. They're really excited for the real draft that just took place. Usually, they're bringing their imports over, and everybody starts from scratch. And so, usually, everybody's at their highest spirit at that point, and you get to see different people. We go back to even like Brady when he used to put his model pictures on there, and the different characters you get to see from our league. And I always enjoy that time of year. Especially depending on who Nate pairs up for certain nights, it can get real interesting.
Those are a ton of fun as well. I miss doing the hot seats. I got to figure out how to bring those back. Those were always a lot of fun too. We don't do as much written content anymore, but I got to figure out a way to bring it back live. It was just a fun thing. This is the 415th OMFL Press Pass Live that we have done, which is crazy. What? This started out as a written article way back when. I wasn't even the commish. I had given it to somebody else and started Press Pass Live as a It was OMFL weekly. It was just a written article, and then it turned into a magazine style cover. You've kind of seen those go through the Madden leagues back in the day. Then it turned into a graphic. Then it turned into an actual show. And man, we have done a lot of these, and it's just crazy to look back at 14 years of this stuff since we've been able to record it. Now the OMFL's 26 years old, and but only 14 or 15 years of kind of video history of it, because we didn't have all these tools way back in the day. So it's just been really fun, and I think you both hit the nail on the head with both of those. Those are a ton of fun. I like the mailbag. Those can get really interesting when guys put forth a lot of thought into those, and they bring forth a lot of really fun questions. So it's been a fun show, guys, and I appreciate y'all doing it. So let's do one final thought, Mr. Maniac.
Hey, I got an idea for a new segment during the off season, but I don't know how we do it. So, reveal the imports for the next Madden. So it's like a little bit of a secret. Nobody knows until they get revealed. So
that'd be fun.
Yeah, that would be kind of fun. But yeah, I'm glad to be alive, and glad to be on the show. I wish that cellulitis was not a thing for anyone, because it literally feels like I spilled hot oil on my leg, and it actually looks like it too. So, but I am getting better and feeling better, and I'm glad to be here, and I love the OMFL, and I love each and every one of you guys.
You and Raj, man, you're trying to kill me over here. Just all these medical emergencies. Dwayne, one final thought.
Well, I feel bad now for joking about you being on your deathbed.
It's all right.
I'm glad to see y'all in one piece.
Knew.
I'm glad to see Raj. Raj, I don't know when Raj sleeps, when he doesn't sleep, or when he's at home, or he's at the hospital. I think I messaged him like 2 or 3 a.m. the other morning, and he messaged me right back. So I don't know when Raj ever gets rest. And but yeah, I'm really excited for this OMFL Bowl. I think Nate said earlier, you got two guys, both you're going to have a first-time OMFL champion. I think, like I said, Nipples has been there 3 times, maybe. So this, I don't know if I think Colin's made it once. I could be wrong, but I know Nipples has made it a few times. So it ought to be a really fun one. These are 2 dynamic, different styles of playing. Offensive juggernaut versus defensive juggernaut, with Nipples, just eccentric offense and the way he plays. And both these could be interesting, because I've said the most fun I've ever played with Colin, usually when he's a few drinks deep. And I think the most fun Nipples can be is when he's a few drinks deep. So a few drinks deep, and we could have one hell of an OMFL ball.
You talk about what our old buddy Outlaw used to say, OMFL after dark. That's a whole nother level of OMFL after dark. It's funny because that's my favorite time to play you, is a few drinks deep. So it seems to be a little bit of a running theme here. Logan said, if you ask Dwayne what my favorite thing is, he would say trading. So probably so. I love to trade too. Problem is, I don't have time, even though this season I will, because I'm on top of it. I already got everything almost ready to go. I've been on top of it pretty good. But no one ever seems to they always look at my team and go, yeah, I don't see anything. I'm like, okay, that's freaking great. What am I supposed to do over here? Anyway, my one final thought is, let's just have a clean OMFL Bowl. Man, these playoffs, people get upset easy. I get it. Like a whole 2 months worth of work goes into that one final game, but let's just kind of keep it cool. And I think we'll be okay. Overall, I'm just looking forward to a nice, clean bowl game. That's all I'm really asking for. Outside of that, let's just keep having some fun. We're trying to call it. Dwayne got called into work, unfortunately, but if things change, Dwayne, come call it with us. Throwing it out to Maniac if he's up for it. I've thrown it out to Trey if he's up for it. I threw it out to Big Hurt. He's always seems to be up for it. Looks like it's set. Bill's not going to be happy. Logan probably won't be happy, but it is set for Thursday at 7:30 Central, 8:30 Eastern. So we'll get graphics made. We'll get that thing announced. Mr. Nipples got called away for work, and he's got a point. It ain't fair that he plays the bowl game on hotel internet. So we're going to wait for him to get back home and let him play. And you know what? It gives you guys 2 days to get ready. It gives us 2 days to get everything wrapped up, announced, and ready to go. So if that gets done on Thursday, we're probably looking at It'd be tight, but maybe a Sunday draft, maybe a Tuesday draft. That's probably where it's going to fall because I can't do Monday nights. So it will either be Sunday or Tuesday. And if I know you guys, you'd be like, Sunday, please let it be Sunday. So we'll see if we can make that happen. Guys, thank you for making time for me. We got to let D-Wayne go get some sleep. We got to let Maniac go get healed up. For the rest of you guys, I appreciate you being in chat. The chat just died all of a sudden. I don't know what happened. About an hour ago, it just absolutely, someone murdered it and everybody stopped chatting. But I appreciate you guys being here. Make sure to hit the like button. If you're not part of the OMFL, if you're not part of Grown Folks, go check us out. Details down in the description. We appreciate you. Take care of yourselves. Take care of those around you. Know that you're loved and that you matter. I can't wait to see you on the next one. Until then, God bless.
Smash that like and subscribe.